Your show will go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Vocal Profiling Show, brought to you by Sound of Adoption. For October 8th, 2013, with Richard Olson and
Sherry Edwards. We're bringing to you Vocal Profiling Live, the sister show to Happy Hour. So every other week we will be either doing vocal profiling live for our audience or vocal profiling for famous people. And tonight we're going to be doing some famous people that deal with some pretty serious issues all the time. And we put this out as, are you a warrior in the battle of the bulge? You're not alone. Rich or poor, famous or infamous, weird or not, it strikes us all. And we invited people to come and watch us do vocal profiling using one of our computer programs, BioDiet, as we look at New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, actress Kirstie Alley, award-winning American Idol winner Ruben Studdard, comedian actress Rebel Wilson, and of course Oprah. We ask that all of you keep your microphones closed so there isn't a lot of static and weird stuff going on as we simultaneously broadcast to you through Blog Talk Radio. And we are a featured show on Blog Talk now, which I think is wonderful. And also through WebEx. For those of you who want to join us on WebEx, you can go to our website, soundhealthoptions.com, and go to radio, and it'll take you to Vocal Profiling Live.
And for those that want to listen in at Blog Talk Radio, where the audio is always very good, you can also call in there and listen at 347-850-1407, or you can go to blogtalkradio.com/Sherry-Edwards and make comments in that chat as well. We're cross-chat platforming.
This has been a difficult day. I have blown up 3 computers, and now my computers have exchanged their numbers of what monitor they are. So excuse the showing of all the backdoor stuff that we're doing here as we go on. We're going to be talking about weight issues, and there hasn't been any issues, whether you're, haven't been any answers, whether you're old or young. I saw like a 2-year-old the other day that was almost as tall as she was wide, and there was an article about a 4-year-old getting belly banding. A 4-year-old. I am convinced that vaccinations have a lot to do with stressing the liver, and that the fatty liver is a problem in all of this, and that has not been addressed. And also there are some adrenal issues that have not been addressed. So we have some pictures for you as sort of an introduction. I'll put these over here. This will show you some of the differences in how we are so prejudiced against people who are fat. I admit it, I am prejudiced against people who are overweight. I tend to think people who are not overweight are healthy. They have more energy. I have that impression. And I hate to say this, but I think when I look at people, I think they're smarter. And I hire a lot of people. I deal with a lot of people. And I am wonderfully surprised when I find somebody who underestimates me because I'm overweight. And when they find out that I really have a brain, they're kind of surprised. Richard, do you have any prejudice about fat?
Well, oddly enough, I do. I say oddly enough because in between careers, or breaking it up, I was a chef for almost 20 years. And during the time that I was a chef, because it's hard physical work, I've always been stocky, but I was thick and muscular chefing. And then in between chefing, I was heavier and fat. And the prejudice for me is being judged. I'm the same person in the fat suit or out of the fat suit. I talk the same way. I have the same bad attitude. I'll rant about fracking no matter what my body weighs. And so to be dismissed, because I see people now, because I was during the year that I was sick, I lost a bunch of weight partially because I was bedridden. And now when I see people that wouldn't listen to me before, I'm saying the same things, but now because I'm a weight they find to be acceptable, they listen to me. I find it's for me it's a reverse thing. I'm not going out of my way to look for heavy people. I relate to them, I empathize with them, but I really am, insert polite word, annoyed with being dismissed just because you're heavy.
Yeah,
it's a tricky thing. Cinematically, in cinema, in TV, and everything, if you're fat, you're, jovial, dumb, and lazy.
But you can also be too skinny. Does that give you an image?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're looking at some pictures for those of you watching the show, Lindsay Lohan and Nicole Richie, and they look skeletal. Spooky skeletal. Yes, it does look like something from Halloween. Ooh, that wasn't a nice thing to say either. So you can be too fat or too lean. What would you consider the best body type?
Well, I lean toward, a slightly heavier than is in the norm in portrayed as what is considered the norm in TV or personality. Because I know that if you get your body fat down too low, then your hormones will wreck. And that's what happens to a lot of the Hollywood anorexic types, is they end up with really wonked out hormones because their bodies don't have enough fat to be healthy.
And also, that can come from too much athletics. Have you ever seen, a young Helen Hunt sideways? She almost looks like she's like 2 inches across.
Yeah.
That's too much for me. I would be upset with myself if I was that skinny. But I was a weightlifter for many years. So, and I have these muscles like short, stocky Viking muscles. So it's not likely that I'm going to be very slender. But my doctor wants me to weigh 120 pounds. I look okay. I look good at about 150. But he's insisting that that's too much and I need to get down lower and lower. He also is insisting that my cholesterol ought to be around 80, which is another issue that I think is just totally out of bounds. There is so much going on with weight, even around the world. And I kind of thought America was some of the fattest folks. But look at this. The United Kingdom has 60% of its population overweight. Croatia, 61.4. Israel, 61.9. That was a surprise to me. New Zealand, 62.7. Bosnia, 62.9. Now we're going from small to big here. Egypt, 66%. In some countries, overweight women, or what Americans would consider overweight, are seen as very desirable. And I think Egypt is one of those more tolerable countries. Germany, 66.5. USA, 66.7. Kiribati, which I don't have the slightest idea where it is, 81.5% of their people are overweight, according to American standards probably. and American Samoa, 93.5. That's a lot. And it is getting to the point of ridiculousness. I recently read a story about a Canadian father who lost custody of his kids because the court said he was too fat. He weighed 360 pounds, and says that even though he had lost 100 and some pounds, the court still would not give him custody of his own children. Tell me when being overweight should be grounds for the state taking your children away. Did I put you on your soapbox?
I'm trying not to jump on it, but I could.
Is it the state's business? Is it because they think they're going to be paying more if you're overweight? Well, why don't they do something about it instead of belly banding, which I have 2 people in my family who've had that done, and they are both very ill because of it. And both of them have gained back their weight, and they're doing it to 4-year-olds now. Why not let's go in depth and look at why people have problems with weight and what we ought to do about it. So that's what we decided to do in this show, of looking at some famous people so you could look at their body type and see if you were kind of like that. Do you have a heavy behind and thighs? Do you have a heavy belly? Do you have heavy boobs? You know, where's your weight? And from there, there's lots of books about body types and what you can do about it. But we have found that the most significant information comes from, number one, looking at your neurotransmitters. And there are 3 neurotransmitters, brain chemicals made from cholesterol, that we look at. And I've got the hiccups here. Dopamine, and that's a D sharp, and you'll be seeing some vocal prints of that. It helps you be satiated. You eat for the sensation or the reward, and it helps you feel happy and comfortable and fulfilled and filled up. And it's associated with your thyroid, the dopamine levels, and several other things we'll talk about. Serotonin, for those of you who are going to follow us on Nano Voice, you can look this up for yourself, and you'll be able to see examples here shortly. And that's represented by the note of F. Serotonin alone can raise weight. Now, starting to take insulin also will cause your body to hold on to adipose tissue. A lot of people who start insulin, it's not a neurotransmitter, a hormone, but serotonin and dopamine have a lot to do with the insulin resistance that happens when you need to start taking insulin. So serotonin plays an important role in mood and sleep and appetite. It makes you crave sweets like chocolate when you don't have enough, where with dopamine you can crave fatty foods, carbohydrates. We've had some people in here that crave popsicles and pork and beans together, and they had dopamine issues. The third one is a note of E, and that's norepinephrine, and that's very much involved with the body's energy cycle and Krebs cycle. So when we look at a Krebs cycle, that's how the body begins to produce its own energy. And the energy starts with coenzyme A, and I'm not going to get too technical. I'm giving you these things because they're coming up in these charts we're going to look at, and B5. And then that's where all the vitamin C begins to work in the body that helps support your immune system. Krebs cycle. If the Krebs cycle is down, you can't fight anything. You can't create energy. your immune system is shot, you can't digest your food. So I think anybody going on a diet should look at their Krebs cycle first and how they're using their vitamin C and incoming resources. There is a great product out. I just found out about it. Richard's known about it for years, called Airborne. So I went to Walmart and found some chewable gummies. I love them, and I had so much energy. Even in the evenings, I didn't have to push. The energy was just there. I understand, Richard, that you know the guy that invented this.
It was actually a school teacher. I don't know her personally, but I had met her down through the years. She was from City Grove, and it was actually a school teacher who invented the original Airborne formulation. And she did it because her kids were getting sick at school, and she was getting sick, and, you know, it came out of product out of need. And it's a fabulous product. It's like a fizzy pack you throw in water. It has a good dose of vitamin C and other micronutrients in it, as well as other vitamins for stress and the beginning of a cold or flu. And it's a great product.
Well, that is a major issue when we're going to deal with metabolism and fat. So two nutrients you want to look at, and that's B5, pantothenic acid, and then coenzyme A, both of which you can buy at your health food store. And there's bound to be some kind of program that can test your Krebs cycle out there on the internet someplace. And you can get nutrients or just Krebs cycle. And it's got potassium and magnesium in it. We also test it here with vocal profiling. So that's an important thing to think about. If you're going to go on a diet, clean up that Krebs cycle first. Okay, second one, stressed fatty liver. Stressed liver, fatty liver. When the liver becomes sluggish, it can't make the hormones like leptin and adiponectin and all of these things that help you lose weight. I was surprised that there weren't more adrenal issues or hormonal issues with these people that we looked at. With the adrenal issues, you would connect that with cortisol. You see that all over the TV all the time. Buy this cortisol product. There was no person that we worked with in this group we're going to show you tonight in just a few minutes that had cortisol issues, but a lot of them did have adiponectin issues. And when we begin to look at what are these things that people are having trouble with, adiponectin regulates your glucose and fatty acid breakdown. If there's not a breakdown of that, it's just stored. It's a note of E as the hormone, and it's a note of V as the gene. It's a protein hormone, and it's exclusively secreted from fat tissue into the bloodstream, very abundant in the plasma relative to your hormones. Levels of this hormone are inversely correlated with body fat percentages in adults. And a great many of the people we looked at had adiponectin as an issue, which means to me that they've got adrenal stress. Lack of digestive enzymes. The biggest one I've seen has been, that cause fat anyway, is amylase. What breaks down carbohydrates? You can also see that as diastase. And again, right back to the liver, and the liver not producing the enzymes. Insulin resistance, and a great many people had that. That, I think, is the first start of gaining weight. You begin to become insulin resistant, so the glucose can't be broken down and used as energy, but is stored as fat. Metabolic disorders like thyroid, and one of our people had a thyroid issue. Unbalanced cholesterol metabolism, this is a giant one that we're seeing. They're trying to take your cholesterol down to the lowest possible point, and they're using statin drugs to do it, but that tends to stress the liver and cause you to gain more weight. So lower cholesterol, you're still heavy. There are 2 or 3 people in this group, too, that should never take statins. They have the kind of liver stress that statins would cause them, statin drugs, pharmaceuticals that would cause them to be more problems for them. So there's enzymes that we can look at in our program called BioDiet, and we can tell you which one is in stress. Most of them, for weight anyway, you cannot buy over the counter. But we do provide them for people with sound. We're doing a project right now providing insulin with sound, and that is working very well. The BioDiet program looks at receptors for GABA, which is a precursor to dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, which is the precursor, the brain chemicals that control your appetite and satiation and that kind of thing. Allergies can cause weight gain just because of the inflammation. Overeating, boy, I have seen people eat very, very little and still gain weight. And it's because the doctor just wants to say, get yourself away from the table, you're overeating and you're just lying to me about it. I know better. There's some people out there that tout wrong food combinations. Can't get your butt up off the couch. And then I've added one, the vaccination. There's several different kinds of things that we're going to talk about that maybe you've never heard of before. One's called transthyretin. That is a hormone, liver probably produces it, goes into the spinal fluid and carries your hormones, like your thyroid hormones, to where it should go. There's another extremely important one that's an A-sharp. It's called glucosidase. Glucosidase. When A-sharp is down, there is an immune hit, and this particular enzyme helps regulate glucose. It helps transport carbohydrates where they ought to go, not just lay down and put a big lump someplace. So maltonic acid, which is, we had a show about that, about statin. So several of these things are going to come up. Okay, Richard, of all the people that we have talked about, do you want to know one more than the other as we look at this BioDiet program that we have created for people? We have.
I'm interested in Gandolfini because of the recent, what I would call untimely death.
Ah, okay.
And I think everybody that I saw on that screen is fascinating.
Well, my computer won't work here. It's, oh, there it is, finally.
There we go.
We were asked to do Gandolfini's weight by another entity that was very concerned about him and was his friend. And it ended up that it wasn't really a weight issue that was so much of a problem, although lipotropin was a hormonal issue with him, that the pituitary helps break down the fats. His real issue was genetic cholesterol, and we warned them that this was a heart and circulation issue. And for those of you who are watching, you can see the profile that we're going to put up on our site under profiles, under information and articles. So he likely had been overweight most of his life. Even in the pictures of a teenager, he was a little hefty. So lipotropin, that's going to go right back to the adrenals, relating to cholesterol and inability to get cholesterol out of the system, out of the blood. He had B3 niacin, which is very helpful in the Krebs cycle and very helpful in breaking down fats in the blood. He had a thyroid muscle. No, he had a deltoid muscle in stress, that cap on your shoulder. And when that begins to go and feels strange or tight, usually there's a thyroid issue because the body is so incredibly redundant here. His weight issues were more cosmetic than health-related. The real issue for him was the problems with his circulation and his heart. So we predicted many years ago that he was too acid, he was eating too many meats and acid-producing foods, and that a heart attack was in his future. So if we had known what we know today, and we could have run him through our fatty acid database and probably could have looked at the pathway for cholesterol, starting with cholic acid and cholesterol and pregnenolone and progesterone and some of those things out of the liver, the first thing I'd have done for him would clean up his liver, because I think that's where a lot of his problems were hiding, and it was definitely a cholesterol issue that got him, and that caused him to be overweight. How's that?
It's, amazing. And it makes sense as you wrap it down. If he just had the opportunity to have that, he wouldn't, he really would have. I suspect he was also hyperinsulinemic not just because of the high level of stress of doing what he did. It looks easy, but it's hard.
The show. Notice that he has a lot of his weight at the top of his body and the stomach. That's another indicator you have either or both a fatty liver or insulin resistance. When you're insulin resistant, you tend to lay down white adipose tissue in your stomach area. Okay, what would you like to see next?
Kirstie Alley.
Okay.
She's been one of the larger swingers, from getting all the way down and then coming back up and getting all the way down. And it's been amazing.
Hers has been very odd. It's not really so much a weight issue as it is a nutrient issue here. So we did this, and what came up for her was the inability to use carnitine. And carnitine helps you use fatty acids. And without the use of carnitine, the fatty acids can just keep being stored, or you get very emaciated, one or the other. You need a good basic amino acid carnitine. You get that from meat. It also helps heal the heart. But carnitine is in stress a lot when people can't gain weight. And what was going on with Kirstie is she was just gathering it in her body. She really wasn't using it in any way that was positive for her to be able to lose weight. And until the doctor finds that out and helps her body process carnitine, and by the way, if you want to look at a chart that will help you know how to process carnitine, go to our website to downloads to radiation software. At the bottom of that page, there is a green, dark green, and light green chart that will show you what else you need to use with carnitine. If taurine is out at the same time, then your heart is probably weak, and you're probably not pumping blood very well. We did this in 2008, and she lost weight, and now she's ballooned right back up. There's 3 neurotransmitters, I said, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. In her case, the D sharp is almost non-existent. And that means her dopamine that helps her have a sensation of being full or satisfied when she's eating, or any other time. She would eat from stress. She would eat when she was depressed, from shock, from trauma. When dopamine goes down, you get headaches, and you get anxious, and you're not happy. And then E, norepinephrine. Now, I have found a way to test norepinephrine if this is an issue. There are cold tablets by, I think they're the Tylenol family, and they have pseudo-norepinephrine in them. If you take one of those, and because you got a cold or whatever, and it gives you energy, that norepinephrine in there is translated to the type of epinephrine that will spend your energy that you have stored. but I have never found a way to test for the dopamine. Except if you see something on TV and popcorn, and so you want popcorn, or ice cream, and so you want ice cream, that's an indicator of dopamine. And then serotonin, and her serotonin is just non-existent also in her chart. Her node of F is at 0 or 1, and it should be around 42. So serotonin can be made from tryptophan. You can get that in Turkey, or you can buy it at your health food store, I think now. Calcium is affected by serotonin, magnesium by serotonin. She just needs a good vitamin and mineral assessment that will help her make her neurotransmitters. Her folic acid is also very low, and you'll see that in a lot of diet products. Cholecystokinin was a hormone not being made by her body that helps digest the food that comes from the pancreas. More digestive enzymes there. Also, I would just clean out her system, and so she could absorb issues. Also, one of the other things I think is causing some of her depression is she had gamma butyric acid receptors very unbalanced, and GABA is a precursor to the dopamine and epinephrine and serotonin, and letting those things in the body. So sometimes just taking GABA, and you buy that at your health food store, you can kick those neurotransmitters. But the nano voice is sitting there waiting for people on the site so that they can pull down that nano voice and blah, 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 and they can test that D sharp for dopamine, that E for norepinephrine, and that F for serotonin. That's a real good beginning, because if you aren't making those neurotransmitters, you got a problem with either cholesterol or receptors. And this little program that we have here, BioDiet, will show you which receptors are in stress. You can't buy that at the health food store. You'd have to go to a bioacoustic practitioner. And we're getting more and more of those, every day. We try to keep the classes very small, kind of to 10 people. And we had some matching scholarships available for this class coming up. So class is filling up, and we've got people trying to sign up for November and December just because of those scholarships. So if people want to join us and start a bioacoustic diet center, especially if they're in California or Hollywood, or any place there's fat people, I shouldn't say that, that wasn't very nice. Any place there's people have problems with their weight. If they want to do something about it, they really want to see about what's causing the issues. I think it's way more important for people to be healthy than to be skinny. But that's just my opinion. Okay, we have Ruben Stoddard, the Biggest Loser guy, Oprah, Chris Christie, who just had a very public stomach band, and Rebel Wilson, the new star of Perfect Pitch.
I think Christie.
Christie?
It's a little bit like Vanna White, but yeah, Christie.
To dig out my files here, this was a whirlwind. I did all 6 of these people in a day and a half. So
wow.
It was, and I don't see his file here. Oh, here it is. Well, that's diet information. Not responding. I didn't want to see it anyway. There's Chris Christie. He made it very obvious that he felt a need to go on a diet because of his family. I really thought that it was because he's going to run for president and he wanted to look better. But, that's my opinion when I hear him talk about it. He says that his desire to lose weight is not a matter of ego. And guess what, people? It's not. He doesn't have any notes in the note of C, which is talking about ego. I was surprised at that. His dopamine at D sharp is totally gone. Zero, zilch, nothing. Dopamine leads to tremors, leads to Parkinson's, leads to other kind of cell signaling diseases for the muscle. And if you've ever seen Christy walk, he walks kind of strange, like there's something wrong with his legs or hips and legs in combination. Also, the note of E, the norepinephrine, was very low. But we're guessing here, serotonin is a bit high at 58. So usually there's more nervousness when serotonin is high. But he seems very calm in this interview. And for each of these in the profile, I have put the link where you can go back and listen to the interview and compare with what you see with all of this. So we really didn't know, since it was dopamine and norepinephrine, what was going to be found. So we went a step further and did a frequency evaluation. Now you guys can get this program also. It's on our website. It's called Abacus, and it's free to the public. It's under downloads from soundhealthoptions.com. A frequency domain print confirmed that he had issues regulating serotonin. That's the wake-up chemical. Now, it's also a neurotransmitter that deals with anger, and that may be where he gets his spitfire attitude sometimes on camera, like, my weight's none of your business, get away from me. They eat without being hungry. They eat when they're bored. They pre-munch. They munch unconsciously because they like to chew. And one of the muscle combinations in the jaw does produce the chemicals for the brain to be producing the norepinephrine, the dopamine, and the serotonin. So chewing helps create those neurotransmitters. I thought that was awesome. An in-depth analysis of him says that he has adiponectin, and we've already talked about adiponectin a little bit and what it does, that it's the protein hormone that modulates a number of your metabolic processes, including glucose levels. He has transthyretin. Now, that's the protein that helps your hormones move around your body to the right place. And GBA2. Now, I just discovered this, and I love it. I was trying to work on a family that had Parkinson's, and this GBA gene showed up as part of the issue. I started tracing it down, and it dealt with myelin sheathing, nerve sheathing. But they also explained there was something called GBA2 gene, which regulates carbohydrate metabolism, and something called orexin. Have you ever heard of orexin?
I haven't.
Orexin is one of those little hidden things. It's also called hypocretin, and it's a neurotransmitter that regulates appetite. It's common with narcolepsy and muscle tone, regulates food intake, stimulates wakefulness and energy expenditures. And when this orexin goes haywire, then your hormones that come from the adrenals kind of go haywire. And he had this GBA gene. That means, from all the things that I've read, that your carbohydrate metabolizes, but it doesn't know where to go. So it just lays down in your body on your liver or your stomach, or sometimes you get little lumps under the skin, just little fatty tumors. So I don't know if we can get to Christy to ask him any of these things, or any of these people, but I think it would be great for them to know this. Secondary issues for him is the use of glycine and glutamate, and that's because he's got some insulin resistant stuff coming up, and his muscles are going to get stiff. if we don't clean that up. Beyond what it talks about as weight management, I couldn't resist. There was a lot of circulation issues that were prominent. And I think the delivery of those proteins in that transthyretin is really what's causing his issues, that things just aren't being delivered. He makes thyroid hormones. They're in his blood, but they just aren't delivered to the right spot. He also has carbohydrate issues. He has familiar heart issues and certainly circulation issues. He needs more digestive enzymes. He, too, has stress in the liver and adrenals. Is any of this helpful? Look at
I like it a lot. I think that's an interesting piece that he needs digestive enzymes. That might, I mean, it's simple. I mean,
look at
it's such a simple thing to add a good, plant-derived, like legally digestive enzymes, and with no harm, with no, other things. It's just, wow, digestive enzymes could make this guy's life different.
Well, look at Kirstie Alley's picture. Can you see where her leg, sorry for those of you just listening, see where her legs have rolls of fat even at the ankles?
Yeah.
Well, if you've seen Kirstie, his legs are very small. His chest and shoulders are larger, out of proportion with the rest of his body. So if your body type matches their body type, then these are the issues that you probably should be looking at.
Now, in Beeler's book, this is a long time ago, Beeler's book, Food is Your Best Medicine, probably one of the fathers that first talked about body typing. I think he would refer to that as the gonadal body type. That sort of round, egg-shaped, Humpty Dumpty, skinny legs, all upper body heaviness.
Mm-hmm. Humpty Dumpty. That's a good definition. And just watch him. Or look at his pants are small, but his suit coat is very large.
Mm-hmm.
We should do a show about these. I think we did when we did the Guardian program. We showed all of those different body types. But in this little bit of time, we don't have much. We have 3 more to go.
Wow.
So we can only spend like 10 more minutes on each of them. Who's next?
Did you say Amy Winehouse, or did you just have a picture of her?
There was just a picture of her. I have Ruben Stoddard from The Biggest Loser, Oprah, and Rebel Wilson, the blonde from Let's Joy.
Oprah out of the way. Let's dive right into the big O. Sure.
Long-term issues with Oprah. She did a very nice soliloquy about body image and ego, and when she finally learned that she was not her body's image, she said at that point she didn't mind if she let go of the weight or not. But when we looked at that, you can see by her nano that her ego is very tied to her weight. Isn't this little nano voice sweet? So even though she denies it.
I have such a soft spot in my heart for the nano voice. It's always like, the nano voice. I love the nano.
We should take it on tour.
Yeah.
So even though Oprah denies that weight is an important self-issue, but is very, very closely aligned with her spiritual perspective. For those of you watching this, you can see the A-sharp and C, the notes for C, ego, and A-sharp, spirituality and the immune system, which is probably why people get sick when they're feeling down and depressed, that those A-sharps all deal with the ability to use the liver properly. So as we're looking at Oprah, we see that dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin are all in stress. Serotonin more than anything else. She and Chris Christie has more serotonin than he needs, and Oprah doesn't have any. So they might get along well. So we wanted to know, by using a frequency domain, which one of those were a problem. She has unbalanced norepinephrine, and the precursors to dopamine, L-DOPA, and some of the chaperone proteins are stress. This is going to lead to weak muscles, tremors, cell signaling, in her case, is going to be an issue. The information that the cell or the brain is trying to send to each of the cells is getting interrupted somehow, and not everything is going where it should. She also has the underlying gene and protein for that adiponectin, and she's moving toward insulin sensitivity. There's a redundancy in the body. There's more than one receptor, there's more than one gene, and she had 4 insulin genes that were stressed. She also has problems with the Krebs cycle. In her case, it could be fixed with acetyl coenzyme A. That is in the beginning of the Krebs cycle. You need it probably first. So up at the top, the acetyl coenzyme A mixes with vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, and B5, and then begins that use of the vitamin C. At the end, it uses niacin as a cofactor. Oprah has an incredible lack of niacin. Niacin, a lot of the times, niacin depletion runs in families, and it causes thick blood. It can cause energy lack. One of the things I did notice about Oprah, though, her hormones, reproductive hormones, look beautiful. But that coenzyme A and niacin that helps run her Krebs cycle, her energy cycle, were both in stress. She had fatty acids in stress, I think, along with Reuben, and we haven't done them yet. There is an imbalance in the adipose tissue storage. So that's part of that GBA2 gene that is helps support the transport of carbohydrates. Glutathione, we've studied about that before on this show, causing some inflammation, sensitivity to wheat, and some blood sugar fluctuations. As a secondary problem, she's got some problems with calcium because her copper, molybdenum, and calcium is all unbalanced. And that's going to lead to bone issues and healing the body issues and things like that. Any questions there?
No. It all sounds very, simple and easy when you talk about it. And I think it's interesting that she has a low serotonin level, that she talks to people for a living, because that's one of the things I think it's John Gray that talks about women getting together and talking is one of those things that creates serotonin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
She has a lot of red in her voice, so a lot of spontaneity in the speech that she gave, which was very beautiful about your weight and your ego. And I just put in video Oprah weight, and this came up. And she was talking about how to look at your own self-image with weight, and that you are not your weight. You are the entity inside the perceived package. Well, it was well done. Okay, let's do Rebel next, because I have Reuben's done, but I don't have it printed up. So maybe we'll just leave Rebel for last. She's an upcoming starlet, overweight. People didn't expect her to be doing this. I'm just going to do Reuben's first, because I have this started. I just don't have it all the way done. And I can't see any of it. Did I somehow erase it? I have it started so you can see his picture. He was on a show.
Wasn't he on one of the singing shows?
Yeah, and he won. And I think I've accidentally erased it. Let me see if it's over here on my other hard drive. This was a hard day with all these computer crashes and trying to get all this done at the same time. I'll just talk about it until I see if I can find his picture. He's a big football-looking guy. He wants to get down to 260. And I don't have it. I'll probably have to start over with that one. But it is just gone. Looking down through the list.
Oh, Marion in chat is saying that it was American Idol that he was on.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Marion.
So as we look at he has a thyroid issue, and that really should be looked at. He also has a Krebs cycle issue. One of the biggest things that he has that's keeping him heavy is something called HMG-CoA. And it is the bad guy that makes your body keep making cholesterol. It's what the statin drugs go in and inhibit and even cause more problems. So there's liver health. His thyroid releasing hormone is stress. He has a lot of inflammation in his system. Some of his dopamine chaperones are an issue. But he has genetically something called ovastatin. And it's a gene, and it regulates the hormones of digestion and carbohydrate metabolism. So that's where his issue is. Someone should just absolutely look at his carbohydrate metabolism. He also has some trouble using minerals that we should look at. And acetyl-CoA, his energy cycle, he shares that with Oprah. You can look at that one because I lost the file. But we will post them for you. This is Rebel Wilson, and outside of Roseanne Barr, I don't think that I've ever seen anybody, women, who were quite heavy in the beginning, make their way in Hollywood. And in this case, this young lady is. Have you seen the show? I haven't. Perfect Pitch, I ought to watch it if it's about music. But when I ask people to tell me who they would like to see, she was one of the very top ones. And she wants to lose 55 pounds. And you can see that her weight's in the middle, in her boobs and her stomach, which is kind of a pituitary thing, I think. She shows a lack of digestive enzymes. Using Nano Voice for her was not easy at all. There was so much music and sounds and other things in her vocal print that I couldn't get a lot. She will need help in staying on a diet or going on a diet because she just goes 100 miles an hour and then realizes that she's hungry and she'll stop and eat anything. So somebody's going to have to be right there with her. She shares that issue with Kirstie Alley. She also has a lot of organizational skills that came up while she was talking about her weight. She has this very strong pull between intellect, and that's indicated by the yellow bars there, and that whatever she thinks of has to be a useful purpose. Now, she shares that with Lady Gaga. She takes her self-worth from what she can accomplish, but you can also see at this first pass that dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin are all zeros. So I had no choice but to go look at her graph, and it was full. Of all the people we looked at, and even though James Gandolfini is dead, of all the people we looked at, she had the most issues. The other had an issue that you could hone in on. They had a fatty liver or a thyroid issue or couldn't use cholesterol. In her case, she had a lipotropin hormone, and so did gongapine with this. And it's a hormone that stimulates the release of fatty acids. And we're looking at a linolenic acid and those other fatty acids that don't get broken down, so they just get put away someplace, and it's a lump on your behind. Arachidonic acid is the other one that came up prominent for her. There were issues with the precursors for dopamine. She lacks an enzyme called tryptophan monogenase. Total lack of digestive enzymes. That's 3 people who had that. In addition, she had folate, niacin, chromium, and iodine. Those are indicators of thyroid and blood sugar issues. Adiponectin gene and the circulating protein is stressed. If I was going to help her lose weight, that's where I would go first with her, the adiponectin, and that would give her the rush to get started, and then bring in the lipotropin. She doesn't have, bioacoustically speaking, she doesn't have enough cell respiration, and that's being caused by liver and adrenal stress. The other one is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that would mean the cells are not respirating enough nitric oxide, and it would leave her open to metal toxicity. She's also developed issues with insulin resistance. She has the ovastatin gene that controls appetite. That's hereditary. And she has the cholesterol issues, and she has the inflammation. You know, I don't know how this girl is going to keep going unless she just stops and starts feeding herself the right foods, not starving herself, good nutrition, get a good evaluation of her genetics, and stop eating foods that cause inflammation, like sugar and flour and meats. And what other foods cause inflammation? So
I'll go back and harp on wheat and gluten. Any of those, stop refined carbohydrates.
Absolutely. I brought a little thing up because 2 or 3 of these folks had glutathione in stress. And I just read an article about diabetes and glutathione, and how glutathione, because of its ability to help support the sulfur and the coenzymes and the molybdenum and the inflammation in the body, that people just should go off wheat. If your muscles are stiff at all when you have been sitting for 5 or 10 minutes, you get up and you're stiff or creaky, then you likely have a glutathione issue. And glutathione and glutamic acid and glutamate all pitch hit for one another, doing the same thing, and it's the same frequency family as aspartame. So if you've got those creaky joints and muscles and you haven't worked out to cause them that way, or your insulin isn't sky high to cause your muscles to be hurting, or you don't have fibromyalgia, you might try getting off wheat or any kind of gluten or gliadin products, because it may be causing the trimethyl and dimethylglycine not to be able to feed the muscles and soak them in these nutrients that cause them to be supple and non-stiff. That was another thing that was in Rebel stuff, that she had issues with connective tissue. So I would look for her to hear about this somehow, what we've been talking about, and maybe go to a good endocrinologist and see what they could do, or to get to a bioacoustic technician and see what is going on. Chris Christie also has that problem with glutathione, so his muscles are likely not at ease with each other. I would want to look at some of his circulation too. It's just, things just aren't being delivered. They're not going where they ought to go in his body. Do you like this gossip?
I do. I like this kind of gossip. This kind of gossip is much more interesting than all that other ridiculously gossip stuff. I can't. But this is fascinating. And I would really say that, well, I would say to all these people, well, I would say to anybody, you know, to stop weed. Just everything, you know, all my research and everybody that we've talked to, whether it was the Wheat Belly guy or, you know, whoever it is, the Carlsons or, you know, I mean, wheat just seems like a tricky thing to be eaten.
I think.
Besides, I mean, with the GMO thing, it's like it's off the table in my brain. GMO just kiboshes it.
I think people are going to get totally off wheat if we can find something that they could substitute.
Yeah.
If you guys like what we did, we could do this at happy hour next week, next Tuesday. If you're interested in bio-diet and looking at your own kind of stuff. If you liked what you saw, send it off to your friends on Facebook and tell them that it will be available on archive, on Blog Talk Radio and some other places. Richard, right?
Yes, it'll be on Blog Talk Radio in about a half an hour.
And Skitter.
And also on Stitcher.
Stitcher, I couldn't think of it. I was thinking Twitter, Skitcher.
Stitcher, yeah.
And if you know of anybody that you think would like to publish these stories about why people are fat, and if you think it would help other people know about it by looking at these body types and matching them up, say with 3 or 4 people and running a couple-page spread in one of those diet magazines or Women's Days or People or whatever, if you've got any connections there, see if you can get this to the people, or if you've got any connections to any of the people that we wrote about or talked about, then let us know about that, and we'll try to get the information to them. It may save a life. It is time's up.
That was fun. That was the kind of gossip I like.
But hard to believe.
It sounds, you know, especially, and that you're doing it with Nano. Wow. As always, the Nano Voice, amazing.
Well, a lot of it was confirmed by the Nano Voice. The only one that didn't match was Rebels, and that's just because she had everything everywhere. And it's not that she's going to die tomorrow, but she's in stress on so many layers and levels that, Steve just put up, there's Christy's contact information. I will send him a local profile. And I think I'd like to put this in a little booklet form. We've done another little booklet form called The Shutdown, and what was going on there and who's involved. And you'll be surprised at who's in charge. When we looked at Reid, Obama, Bonner, and Pelosi. We also did one on the Syria issues. I just posted one on Obama versus Miley Cyrus. That's interesting. And Obama versus Gandolfini. They both have a love of humanity. You want to know who's in charge, George? Take one guess, and I'm answering the chat here. Take one guess. Who do you think is in charge of that whole fiasco? Shutdown. Pelosi. You're absolutely right. It's Pelosi. She knows more about.
George.
Yes. Awesome. She knows more and has more information than any of them. Now, she's not going to carry it through. She just has the connections to make it happen. I was darn surprised to see that. But thank you guys.
Start playing me extra music before I get on my soapbox. I could flame out about that whole thing. Wow, what a boondoggle.
You know, we've done Pelosi and Reid. Both of them are pre-Alzheimer's, yes. Reid more so than Pelosi. But Pelosi's ego is sky high here with this. But she's the one with the most information. She's the one pulling the strings. And I can't see for what purpose yet. But isn't it nice to have the nano to know who to blame? Know where to go? Well, thanks.
Very good.
Thank you, Richard, for being here. Thanks for helping. Thanks all of you for joining us. Please help us spread the word. Bioacoustics is biological.
Thank you, George. That was a great close. George is closing with, she's the one who carried the gun, but it's for gun control. Exactly, George. Thank you, everybody. That was a great show. Thank you.